UFTV is your university and community TV station.
Welcome to the University of Findlay Arts and Culture Show. I am Sharinda, your host, and today we have on set with us Mr. Tim Crosby. Welcome, Tim.
Thanks, Sharinda. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you here, and you work with a very special organization, K9's for Warriors, and you have a very special job there. Why don't you tell us what that is?
Well, it is a very special organization. My job is just one of many, but I'm in corporate fundraising, but we're still largely a grassroots organization. And because of what we do, we train dogs, the vast majority of which come from rescue shelters, to be service dogs for post 9/11 veterans with the invisible wounds of war. And for me, and for most of us who work there, it's a labor of love. Mm-hmm. To rescue the dogs who then rescue the warriors is the perfect sweet spot.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And in order to be able to do that, you have to have people on the front lines, so to speak, that are building the relationships, not just locally in the state of Florida, but on a national, and it's starting to move international levels. And so with that, what is your responsibility?
Well, we all wear a lot of hats.
Mm-hmm.
The whole genesis of the organization was that it was basically a mom and pop operation, a mom and her son, mm-hmm. and we've evolved from that. But it's making people aware of the challenges that this population faces when they come home, and that there is a solution. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, the Veterans Administration does not provide support for service dogs for those with post-traumatic stress and related injuries. So we've kind of tried to fill the gap, and unfortunately the gap is larger than it should be.
And I love something that the founder has said. I've heard her say it numerous times, and Sherry Duvall is the founder. She says, our veterans go off as soldiers to serve, and they sacrifice a lot, as do their families. And when they come back, we have to remind our now veterans that they are not forgotten, and we have to fix them and support them so that they feel that they can have a quality of life that is due everyone.
Well, and candidly, that's the practical goal. Give these young men and women, some not so young, but men and women an opportunity to live a normal life, get out of the house, interact with people, and the service dogs help them do that. On a more emotional level, it's the difference between life and death for many. Mm-hmm. More than 20 veterans a day take their own lives. Mm-hmm. And when Sherry created the organization and learned about canine therapy, she was struck by the fact that those stats just blew her away, and she said, this is not acceptable and we're going to change it.
Mm-hmm. And it was very close to home for Sherry.
It was.
Because her son was not an active duty member of the military, but he was a contract laborer hired by the military to travel over into war zones to train canines, correct?
That's correct. Brett Simon was a police officer, a bomb dog handler.
Mm-hmm. Here in the States.
Here in the States, mm-hmm. In suburban Cincinnati. And like a lot of young men and women in the wake of 9/11, he wanted to do something to give back. Mm-hmm. So he signed on as an Army contractor, training and handling bomb dogs. And in that capacity, he's on the front lines, mm-hmm. facing the same kinds of trauma that our warriors faced. Mm-hmm. And he came back broken. Mm-hmm. And the short story is that Sherry noticed when he's with his dogs, he was a little bit more like his old self, mm-hmm. and that prompted her to do some research. Mm-hmm. And that's where she found out that you could train a dog certain tasks to mitigate those symptoms, and she found out about those veteran suicide statistics. And literally in her home, she and Brett started the organization 8 years ago. We're now the largest provider of service dogs to disabled veterans in the country.
And you have done it, when I say you, I'm talking about the organization, have done it in such a way that to me is very heart touching. I've had the opportunity to tour one of the facilities, the actual, it wouldn't be the home base, Sherry's home, but the first organization site, K9 training camp after that. And there aren't any leftovers anywhere. This is not an organization where people send their leftovers or send used products. This is an organization that has a board of directors that believes our soldiers, our veterans, they need the best of everything, and they also believe that for the dogs.
It's absolutely correct. We started in Sherry's house, moved into another house initially, and we were blessed that a developer of the largest, fastest growing community in Florida, Northeast Florida, donated 10 acres of land. The contractor, the architect, the engineers, the subcontractors all donated their work. So when we moved into Camp K9, our headquarters facility, in 2015, we did not have at the time any long-term debt, and that's what enabled us to scale. It is state-of-the-art. It's where the dogs live and are trained. It's where our warriors come from around the country each month and live and train. And it's a comfortable place where distractions are kept to a minimum, and the warriors and their dogs can spend 3 weeks together 24/7 becoming a team. And
with that, I think back to what Sherry has said before. She wanted to make sure that the kennels didn't stink. There was not going to be any stink. And going to state of the art, that is the case.
Well, it's interesting because we're outside of Jacksonville, Florida, and early on, the Jacksonville Humane Society came out to look around, and they, who are around dogs all the time, specifically commented about how meticulously clean the kennels are, and they are. I mean, it's a pet resort in some ways. It's a great place for these dogs that are rescued to spend their time training, and it is meticulous.
Well, and there's outdoor runs, so these dogs are worked with handlers that live on site. Some of them are also veterans that now are employed by the organization. And then you have volunteers that come in and work with them on commands and on walking, on leash, all of that. But something really special has happened in the last year or so, and that is the fact that you have a facility being built there on site where the dogs will be able to work on a more regular basis, because with where you're located, thunderstorms are quite readily in the forecast in the afternoons, which slows down work progress for the dogs. So it's at a location where it's important to have that indoor training facility.
And it is now operational.
Oh,
I'm
that's
happy
so
to say.
Because when we were there, it was still going up and in process.
It's a huge step forward because in the old days, when it rained or we had one of those big afternoon thunderstorms, we couldn't do the right work. So it's been a godsend. And candidly, our biggest issue now, kind of the choke point, is getting a steady, consistent supply of good, trainable, healthy rescue dogs. So we've got some other program or other capital projects in the pipeline to help us expand our bandwidth, because there are, they estimate 400,000 or 500,000 men and women come home from these conflicts with the invisible wounds, and maybe 20% of those could benefit from a service dog. That's 100,000 people. And we're the largest in the country, and we've done 600 or so. We have got to do something for these people. They need help, and a lot of times they don't know.
They need it yesterday.
They need it, absolutely. And you've talked to some of our warriors. They will tell you this was a lifesaver. And they're our best ambassadors because they can tell their story and share that this works. And the population we serve are those most at risk. So we're motivated to try to get as many teams through there as possible.
And with that addition, one of the other challenges in taking care of the animals was the vet care. And again, I just love your board. I love the vision and the proactivity that they have in empowering you to go out and build these relationships, because you now have a vet clinic on site where before you were having to set up times and locations for discounted rates for veterinary care or try and get it donated. But you now have a clinic on site, and maybe explain how this works, because it's really special, because it again ties to the greater community.
Well, we started in Northeast Florida, the greater Jacksonville community, and we got incredible support from them, including from some veterinary clinics. As part of that project that built that indoor training center, we built a vet tech lab, basically. We have 2 vet techs on staff now. They can do everything but surgery. So it keeps our dogs healthy. If we need surgery, because we spay and neuter all the dogs that are already done, we actually have a vet who has a mobile clinic who'll come in and work with our vet techs and take care of that surgical stuff.
But this keeps them inoculated.
Absolutely.
When they come in, they can be dewormed right away, checked for the fleas and the ticks right away. And then Lyme disease is huge down there, and all of that can be done in-house now.
And they go, when the dogs first come in from a shelter, they go into quarantine for a period of time, and the vet techs can stay with them. It's about 10 days or 2 weeks to make sure they don't bring something into the kennel, because if something gets into the kennel, it spreads like wildfire.
Yeah.
And again, that increases our ability to, enhances our ability to train more dogs and get them in the hands of more warriors.
And so that's talking about the living space for the K9's. Let's talk a little bit about the living space for the veterans themselves, because again, this is a country club, and I mean that in a way of it's the best of the best. And I love how the living quarters are set up to empower people to be able to network, but also this is very exhausting. There is a lot going on behind the scenes that is invisible. So they also have times where they can excuse themselves for privacy and not have to explain themselves to anyone, just be able to retreat. So will you tell us a little bit about what the thought was behind setting up the living quarters and how it's executed for the K9 camps?
Well, it was Sherry's vision. Family. She's mom to all of us, to all the warriors. So the facility is a reflection of her family values. We have a big, they call it a clubhouse. It's like a gigantic living room. There's a big, there's a big table. We have
family
volunteers,
style table.
Family style.
Very important.
We have volunteers who cook a home cooked meal every night for the warriors. They eat together as a family. We get leftovers. We have a thing called the K9's 15. It's the weight we've all put on eating leftovers because it's meat and potato stuff. It's great.
Yeah.
But the other big part of that is peer support and peer relationships. You don't come through this alone. For many of the warriors, as I mentioned earlier, it's a last resort in many cases. They're nervous. They're anxious. They come in on a Sunday.
And they've left family to get here.
They've left family, and when they're here, they don't leave campus. The family doesn't come with them. They can obviously stay in touch with electronically and whatnot. They come in on a Sunday, kind of get settled in. We think we know the right dog for those warriors, but on Monday, they actually have lunch with our trainers, our dog trainers, and they probe about lifestyle and family situation, living arrangements, kids, other pets in the house, and those types of things. And we verify that we have the right dog for that lifestyle, and they meet their dog. We call it Dog Day. It's a very special day for those of us on the administrative side, because when the warriors are there, privacy is paramount. But we do get to see them on Dog Day, and then we get to see them 21 days later when they graduate.
Graduation.
And the change is profound. But it's incredible. And then through that 3-week period, they're living they got this big clubhouse. We have 3 4-bedroom suites. Every warrior has his or her own bedroom. And by the way, we don't mix the sexes in a class. It's either going to be all male or all female. And they depend on one another. And then you have this mix of Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, Coast Guard, whatever. But they become brothers and sisters. And even afterwards, because we have wraparound services and communications tools for the warriors to talk among themselves, that's where the warriors of all stripes and sexes can depend on one another. And that's an incredibly important piece of what we do. That and the fact that all of our warrior trainers, the people who actually train the warriors, are graduates of the program, so they've been there and done that. It's a very collaborative team environment, and that goes for anybody on our staff, whether you're raising money or training dogs or thanking supporters or handling the front desk. It's an incredibly fulfilling, team-oriented environment, and that kind of pervades all the facilities as well.
And there was one spot that I really, really liked that you didn't touch on, and I know that
I know where you're going.
And I know that it is considered part of the celebration space. It is a really cool pool that is in the shape of a dog bone, and it's a salt water. So you don't have to worry about the dogs with chemicals and chlorine and all of that. And this is a place where the veterans get to have playtime, relax time, celebration time, bonding time with their canine.
Yeah, it's got a water softener in it, so it's because we have hard water in that part of the country. So yeah, on a hot summer day, and it gets hot in Northeast
Not
Florida.
even in summer.
But one of the joys for us is because, in fact, my office actually peeks out over the courtyard.
Yeah.
On a hot day, when the Warriors come home from training and finish, they have seminars and whatnot.
Sure.
When they finish their work day, and they take that vest off the dog, and the dog can be a dog. You see them play in the pool, and it is.
And
it's
a lot of
incredible.
the homes where the veterans are living, their doors open up to that
They all
space.
open up on the courtyard. Yeah.
So this is inviting for everyone, and it's a calming effect for everyone.
And candidly, when the Warriors are off campus training or in the open week between classes, the dog trainers will actually use the pool as a training mechanism. They want the dogs to be able to be comfortable around water. Again, the goal of the program is to use the dogs to get Warriors out and about and make them comfortable. And the dogs can't do that if they're not comfortable in those environments. So the pool is a very special place for all of us.
Yeah. So there's also a fleet of vehicles that is just amazing. And these vehicles, when the veterans are ready, they load them up and they take them out into the community to practice being in restaurants, being in large stores, locations that have become paralyzing for them once returning back to the U.S. are now becoming their new soil to practice new tactics with their dog. And I just absolutely think it's so special that those vehicles are new vehicles or newer, and they're all wrapped with the K9's for Warriors. So again, the community is aware that they're there and can be supportive in ways, as well as be respectful of boundaries while they're working. That's so special, again, those little details.
Well, again, the goal when the Warriors are in town is to minimize distractions, make them comfortable so they can focus on what they're there to do. And the vans, and there are a couple of buses, provide a number of benefits, not the least of which is getting the Warriors out to the places they need to go.
They don't have to worry about driving, they don't have to worry about directions. That stress is gone.
And they go to dog parks, they go to Costco, they go to the final exam is Target. They go to the Jacksonville Zoo, which, imagine that. These are men and women who have been struggling to get out of the house. Now they're at the zoo with all these kids running around and all the
different noises.
And the goal is to put these Warriors in the same kinds of uncomfortable places that they'll be when they go home, because they have to learn to cope with that. And the vehicles are great. And then of course our procurement team uses those vans to go get dogs. Not all they've gone as far as Texas and the Atlantic seaboard. We sometimes get dogs shipped in by generous donors who drive them or fly them in from Michigan and California and Long Island. I mean,
90% of the dogs are surrendered and or rescued animals.
Yep.
So we're saving lives. I own it too.
No, you're part of the team.
I'm so passionate about this.
No, that's actually a very good point, Sharinda, because we want people to feel like they are part of the program. And that's anybody, whether you're cooking for the Warriors or you're telling our story. It's everybody has a little skin in the game.
But we're saving dogs' lives and human lives with the way these matches are happening, which is so exciting.
Well, and we do get gifts from breeders from time to time. We do sometimes have to get hypoallergenic dogs if a Warrior or a family member has an allergy, and we get those from breeders. But we also have volunteers who raise those puppies until they're mature enough to get in the kennel, about 14 or 16 months. And I asked a volunteer one time, how in the world do you raise a dog for a year and then give it up? And she said, all you have to do is meet that Warrior and see that bond that takes place, and it is.
No, I've done my job.
We have
Foster
one lady.
care.
We have one who's done. I think she's done 8 dogs, if I'm not mistaken. Amazing.
Yeah. So for people watching today, You have an amazing website where they can go and check out everything we're talking about. And there are supplies, there are things that are needed on a regular basis there. Do you have that on the website so people can see where the needs are so they can designate donations? Or if there may be a business that's in that business, they can ship some things that are needed? Tell us about that, please.
So K9'sforwarriors.org is our website. On the homepage, there are tabs along the top, and if you look at ways to give, it'll link you to a series of ways to give, and one of those would be, supplying some things that we need in the kennel. You got to have fuel to run the program, and so financial support is important. But making people aware, having them share our story, and just understanding that there's a solution for these men and women who come home with invisible wounds, and the more people that know that, the better. And then, of course, the big issue we have today, and you've heard it probably ad infinitum, is fake service dogs. We can go on Amazon, buy a vest, and put it on our dog and call it a service dog, and that really hampers the ability of the people who really need a service dog, which is a piece of medical equipment. It keeps them from being able to get the full access they need. So we're working on that. We're working on some governmental issues with the VA, and there's been some progress made, and the folks on Capitol Hill are looking at some legislation. So there's lots of stuff going on, but it all starts at the grassroots level with volunteers and people who help share our story.
And I want to touch real quick on something you said with the financial side of things. Many of our viewers may not be aware that when our veterans are going to the K9 camp, they don't pay for their flight in. They're not paying a housing fee. It's not what we would call camp, where for $19.95 you too can go for a week. Everything is funded with the amount raised for that dog. So when there's amounts raised for a dog, they're also taking into account the training time, the veterinary time, but also the wear and tear on the facilities, the travel, the transportation. And then these veterans, after they graduate, they don't just go away and they're on their own. They have check-in points, and those are done through technology. But if there's a need for a soldier to get back and they financially are struggling, the services are there to make sure they can get back to get that checkup, that well check for themselves and their animal. So it's about $25,000 right now for that team effort of parent, from the time that the dog is rescued or comes into the facility, and the preparation, and for the time of transportation and incorporating and the meet between the two of them, and then the travel home.
And that takes into account that because these are largely rescue dogs, not every dog's going to make it through the program. Probably 1 out of 4, roughly, sometimes 1 out of 3 washes out of the program. And by the way, we'll never send that dog back to a kill shelter. We always
you have a really, really great program that you're doing.
It's in fact, there's a Facebook page called K9's for Warriors Adoptable Dogs. It has the dogs that are up for adoption. And there's some great dogs that might not make it just for a little. It might be a little bit of timidity or fear in public.
They might be afraid of a sound that's a consistent sound that they'd be exposed to. It's not that they're bad dogs.
Correct. And we're never going to give a bad dog to anybody. But we also want those dogs to go to good homes, so we actually vet the potential adopting families, and there's no cost to them. One of the things that does make us different is the program comes at no cost to the warrior. They do have to get to us, but we work with organizations that might fly them in. But after that, everything's taken care of. And we've made some progress with the VA in their acknowledgement that these are PTSD mobility dogs, which makes them eligible for a program called Trupanion, which is like insurance for dogs. So the VA will pick that up, and we're just starting to get some traction there, because vet care can be a big expense. And while we have a program for catastrophic situations, just day-to-day care, the Trupanion program is going to be a big boost. So
wonderful news.
It's the whole program. We're very careful about how we spend money. As long as Sherry Duval is part of this program, I can promise you, and we all buy into this. I mean, all our financials are on the website. about 81 cents of every dollar goes to the program. You got to
Well,
you got to keep the lights on, but
and
we're
you
careful
don't
about
spend unless you have it. So if it's not been donated or it's not been raised, you can have a 5-year plan out, but that's not happening before the funds are being raised to protect everything.
That's correct.
And that's amazing and wonderful.
Well, it's the leader. It started with Sherry, and as I mentioned before, it started in kind of organically, but we do have a independent board, and like any other organization, we have to answer to the board. Some of us, we have a lot of great young people on the team. Some of us had our careers, and we're doing this because I didn't serve. This is my way of it's the most incredibly fulfilling thing. I like to tell people, as you get older, it becomes increasingly important to do something that matters. What we do matters, and I'd probably, don't let Sherry know this, but I'd probably do it for nothing if she asked me to.
She probably already knows that.
Yes, she does, I think.
Yeah, because people that work for nonprofits are already doing it for almost nothing. Financially, everything.
But it's the right reason, and I think that's why we're successful. Is people, you're part of a team and a culture that works together and has a specific goal in mind. And I'm telling you, once you meet the men and women who come through our program, and more importantly, their families, moms and dads, or spouses, or kids, it is incredible.
And the city of Findlay is very blessed because we have one of those veterans right here. He's a very dear friend of mine, as is his wife. And because of, like you said, because he is an ambassador and he shared his story, the University of Findlay students have raised, with the help of community and their generosity, has raised enough money for one dog. And part of the fun of this is, if you raise funds for a dog, you get to be the one to name the dog. And so the first dog will be named Findlay, after the university as well as the community that's been so generous. And the students got so excited about that, they said, let's do 2 dogs. So we are raising money currently for that second dog, and we're almost $2,500 into that goal, which sounds like we've got a long way to go, but we've already funded one, and this one's name will be Hancock, after our county, to celebrate, again, the generosity of the community, that we couldn't do it without them saying, yeah, I'll give 100 here, I'll give 50 here. And so for those who are fundraising through K9's, they can also go to that same website and find our page if they want to be someone donating to the Findlay Hancock dogs, correct?
I don't know that URL, but there's a specific URL where they can donate. It comes directly to us, but you get kind of under your umbrella.
It falls under the total that we're raising our money for, and we'll be able to link that up.
Well, you guys have a fabulous community. I mean,
we're very blessed.
You are, and you referred to Louis Belomini, who's one of my favorite people in the whole wide world. I think he's representative of this community, and we've gotten to know Louis and Jessica and the people at the university and the people at Marathon Petroleum. It's a special place. I think I know you know how special it is, and we're proud to be part of that in a little bitty way.
Well, we're very proud to be a part of what you are doing. And we say it's in little ways, but for the veterans and their families who are receiving and able to be matched with an animal, with a dog, it's a huge way. It's life-saving. So it's all those little tiny ripples in the water that ends up becoming a positive tsunami in lives of individuals who need it and aren't sure how to ask, but they're being found, and how special that is.
Can I tell you a quick story?
Absolutely.
So my first week on the job, I started on a Monday, and it happened to be the week of graduation, about 3.5 years ago. So the graduation ceremony is 3 days after I started. So we do it out on the patio around the pool, and it's like any other graduation ceremony. The warrior comes up and gets his certification, and they take pictures, and everybody claps. So I didn't know where I was supposed to be, so I'm standing in the back behind a young woman and these 2 little boys. And this warrior's walking up, and he's got a big grin on his face, and the little kid tugged on his mom's blouse and said, "Hey, Mommy, look, Daddy's smiling." Aww. I haven't seen him smile like that before. And that's when I knew I was in the right place. I'm telling you, I'm tearing up just thinking about that. And that's what it's about. We get notes from wives who say, this was the man I married 20 years ago, he's been missing. And keep in mind that the spouse and significant others play a key role in helping find us. Because warriors, I mean, it's all word of mouth. And they get pushed out the door to this time, and we've had people say, my wife was the one who found you. I didn't really think it was going to do any good, but it saved my life, saved their family. And that's what it's about.
So what is that website one more time? www.
K9's for Warriors, F-O-R, K9's with the letter K, forwarriors.org. And you can find a lot of information there, some great videos, some information about how your support makes a difference in the lives of these rescue dogs and our warriors who so much need it.
You had a local film director down in your area that saw the importance of this and actually has done a documentary on K9's for Warriors, and it's called New Leash on Life, the K9's for Warriors story. And it actually interviews 3 veterans who chose to go through the K9 camp. And it has won 4 Emmys and 3 Tellys. And Tellys is another award that's big in the industry. And from its response, they produced more films of the individual families, and that has now gotten and received an Emmy nomination for this season. And then PBS has purchased the rights to start showing this documentary on all of their broadcast systems, wherever they choose to show it. So that's got to be an awesome gift for the warriors, their families, and the foundation to know that their story is being so well represented and told, and being offered that hope to others who may be watching going, I don't think this is for me, but seeing and hearing it from their brothers and a sister saying it works.
Well, the way that all came together and grew, the film, is phenomenal. The producer's a fairly well-known documentary producer and director. He's won awards before. He read about our story and said this is too good not to look into. And he did it. The original film is about 60 minutes long. It's fabulous.
So
but they had so much footage that they actually broke it down into 4 individual stories, one on each of the warriors and then one on Sherry and Brett. And it's available on Amazon. If you're a Prime member, you can pick that up. And just last week, I was down in South Florida. We're up in North Florida. I was down in South Florida and saw a promo on PBS. They were going to show the film over the Veterans Day holiday.
Weekend. Yeah.
And again, that's exposing our program to a whole new group of people. But regardless of one's political affiliation or whatever, people have seen this film and have just fallen in love with it because it's so compelling. It tells the story in a very emotional, honest way. And these warriors spilled their guts, and that's not easy to do. In fact, that's one of the things that I have learned that the program has helped warriors be more comfortable talking about what their situation is. I mean, post-traumatic stress is like alcoholism in a way. Once you're an alcoholic, you're always an alcoholic. You deal with it. Once you have post-traumatic stress, you're always going to have post-traumatic stress. This is a way, it's a coping mechanism, and it's an opportunity to, for them to deal with it. And the fact that they can now talk about what triggered it is a big positive step.
That's what I was going to say, and the dogs help with that, with the lifelines of the harnesses.
Yep.
So that
they call that an umbilical leash, and for a reason, because it's a connection. And it's critically important that that connection stay in place.
Tim, thank you so much. I know that you are touring and you're in lots of different communities talking about this amazing foundation. Thank you for making time in your schedule to stop by today to chat. I know that we have inspired and encouraged someone that's watching today.
Well, it has been a real delight to be here, and I cannot think of a more embracing community than Findlay. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. And thank you. We hope that you have been able to get something out of this that you can share with a loved one who may need the support of a K9, or if you are someone that wants to support our veterans and this feels like the way, please check out the site. You're saving lives. Until next time, be well.
UFTV is your university and community TV station.